Right. Lovely to see you again, Freddy.
Nice to see you. Well, today I thought we'd try something a little different. Rather than an interview or a podcast, we'd have a mutual conversation. So instead of a monologue, it'll be a duologue.
Sounds great.
And I've been hopeful that someone would come on to talk about diet and nutrition. And so far, the takers that I've had, they haven't got right into it. So I want to get right into it and talk about things that people can take away with them straight away and start to realise. Like one of the things we were discussing the other day is a simple thing about grains and oats. You know, and I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. It's something that people should know about because just the thing with having rolled oats as against steel cut oats, you know, and rolled oats are about 85 on the glycemic index, and the steel cut oats are about 52, something like that. Now, ideally, you want something around 35, but, you know, that's grains for you, and that's what happens. And there's a conundrum. You go on losing weight, and that's the weight loss story, but then you move into the sports situation, you have the problem where you need the carbs. So it's a catch-22. One says, you know, no carbs and no sugar and all the rest of it. Then you got all these athletes just slugging down the carbs like there's no tomorrow. So it's a real minefield out there for people. How have you found the weight loss story? Because you've kept your weight under control for a lot longer than I have.
Well, pretty well most of my life. There's a couple of times I got to be 10 kilos overweight. But I think a lot of that goes to your self-image. So if you see yourself as a trim person, suddenly you look in the mirror and you're not, you go, could do something about it. Whereas a lot of people get that hopeless, they go, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. I feel so depressed, I'll eat some more.
Yes,
and, you know, I get a lot of people that put on 1, 2 or 3 kilos a year, and then they come to me after a few years of doing that, and now they've got a pattern of eating food that's not ideal for them, and they've been using the food to suppress emotional issues. So then we've got our work cut out. We've got to resolve the emotional issues and sometimes educate people on diet. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, but I've spent a lifetime experimenting with diet and nutrition, trying to work out what works best for me.
Yeah, it's a personal thing.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting because what works for me might not work for other people. You know, I remember years ago I had a good friend who was a vegetarian, and, you know, both of us were frequently told that we looked a lot younger than we were, and we're both fit and lean and healthy. But she was primarily vegetarian. And, you know, I eat more meat than most dogs. So, you know, I'm much more on the carnivore side. Now, I'm convinced if we had swapped diet, we'd both been fat and sick.
Right. Yeah.
So to some degree, you've got to work out what's right for you. And there's that book, Eat Right for Your Type, that gives you a good hint that often people's blood group and their genetic background is a big factor too.
Well, at around Christmas, I was 92 kilo. I'd gone through a horrendous year last year and the COVID thing and family issues with my daughter was not well. And I got a litany of ailments read to me by the doctor, and they wanted to put me on insulin, metformin, something else as well. Just a lot of statins, right?
Yeah.
And I said, no, hold it right there. I'll be back in 3 months and I'll sort it out. She goes, no, I said, we'll see in 3 months. Well, 3 months to the day it was. To that day, I came into my bloods and lo and behold, I dropped 16 kilo. And she couldn't believe it. Got rid of the fatty liver, the high blood pressure, the cholesterol, the lot. But it's a journey that I've taken before. I've gotten into trouble before, so hence it's not like I was naive to what was wrong and how to fix it. But this time around, it shook me to the core to realise that you can screw yourself up at mature age in a couple of weeks. You just go and have a bad diet for a fortnight. all of a sudden you've got diabetes too. You know, you can wreck yourself in as little as 2 or 3 weeks. You know, you can really smash yourself up. And to reflect on what you said about the emotional stuff, it's not until I lost the weight that the ghrelin kicked in, and now the cravings have started. Like on the way down, there was no cravings. I got all sorted out on the spot. I could lose all this weight. Holy crap! Now I've got cravings, and I've got to fight. And I've got to. Last night I wanted a turmeric latte nightcap. So what did I do? I went out and did it about 3,000 steps. So I burn the calories to afford the budget to not blow my goals, you know. So I thought, damn, I've got to go for a walk around the block so I can have a nightcap. That's crazy. It's not it's not real for a normal lifestyle. But at the same token, I have not wanted to let myself slip. I'm now at 74.6 this morning, right?
Yeah.
I was 74.2 at the start of the week, so I've gained 400 grams.
That's kilos. But 400 grams, you can go to the loo or have a glass of water.
I get that. I get that. But the thing is, as you inch your way down, every little gain is important to you. It's good for the self-esteem and it's good for the self-image. So what you said before, we were talking about Maxwell Maltz and cybernetics. Yeah. How he would do operations on disfigurement and personal appearance and weight issues and all sorts of things as a plastic surgeon. But because they had adjusted their self-image to the new person, they would revert back. Yes. Yeah, and I remember watching a documentary once about a woman who was so overweight that the ambulance to take her to the hospital had to remove the door frame to get her out of the house. Wow. Now, my first thought about that was, well, if she's that big she can't get out of the door, who's bringing the food in? There's someone else in that relationship. Yeah. And it showed pictures of her mother in front of the TV with a camping cooking stove, frantically making hamburgers while the daughter's in the room yelling, quick, bring me more, bring me more. Oh, my God. Now, this poor woman had an operation where they cut away 2/3 of her stomach. And she did lose the weight, but then she had big flappy skin under her arms and on her legs, and she had an operation to remove some of that, but then she became so malnourished and sick that no surgeon would do the remaining operations because they were convinced she'd probably die on the operating table. Yeah. So, you know, things like gastric band, gastric bypass, all those operations, cutting the stomach in pieces and making it smaller, they're not addressing the cause. No. They're symptomatic. Now, what was interesting, they said that she'd been normal weight until she'd had some traumatic sexual abuse at the age of 13. But there was no mention on doing work to resolve the emotions around that. So we have a society that's teaching us to do everything to stick Band-Aids on to avoid dealing with problems. Yeah. Now, if people are overweight, there's a rare number of people who it's a hormonal thing, and if it is a hormonal thing, you can get treatment for it. You know, you can get supplements or support minerals or desiccated thyroid extract or thyroxine, some disease to help balance your thyroid glands and things like that. But for the rest of us, the reason we're overweight is because we're either using food to suppress emotions or we're ignorant. That is, I'm not saying we're ignorant as in stupid, but we think we're eating what's healthy. Well, ignorance is huge. It's absolutely huge. 100 years ago, 90% of the foods in supermarkets today weren't there. Yeah. And I was looking at some of the meals that I post on Facebook and I'm eating good, healthy food. And now it hit me. I remember when I was 12, 13, and 15, my mother was serving these exact meals. So they had the nutritional awareness and knowledge that we have now. No internet, no, but they were really savvy of what was healthy and what was good for you and all the remedies. You know, and we're talking 55 years ago, you know. So what happened? You know, and when I go to the supermarket, I look for food. I remember when I was 18, I went to a gym, and there was this guy. He used to be a gridiron player, American guy, and everyone would go for a run, and he would leave after they left the run. He would pass them and arrive back before them. And he was a mature age guy. And he was selecting all this fruit veg, and he said, "Oh no, I've dropped hundreds of pounds." He showed me his picture of him as a gridiron player. He was a big giant. Now this guy's skinny as a rake. And, you know, he'd figured the game out. He gave me a lot of insights, and I took on some of them at the time, but I forgot them. And then I had my father, who was always chewing his food well. I mean, just chewing your food, it sends signals to the brain. I mean, how many people just bolt their food down? Therefore, they consume a lot more. The more food that they consume because they don't chew it properly, it sits in their guts longer and takes more to digest. And they don't have the energetic relationship between chewing and digestion. You know, it doesn't release the gastric juices and saliva and everything to make the food work.
Yes, we know. I think it was Alfred Vogel, who was considered the father of modern naturopathy. He would teach people how to eat by eating with them. And they would have a smaller fork and they'd have their knife, and they had to put the food in their mouth, put the knife and fork down, sit on their hands and chew with him. And he actually taught them to eat and chew that way. Well, because, isn't that saying, "Oh, let's quickly grab something to eat. I'm going to grab a quick snack. I'm going to chug this. Chug this. Yeah." And it's all about, you know, and then our mind's in what's happening next.
Yeah.
And one of the things that changed for me was actually when I moved here. Prior to moving to this place, I would get chilblains every winter.
Right.
Especially on my feet, sometimes on my hands. Also, I had mouth ulcers more often than not. Often had cracks in the corner of my mouth. And lots of those little niggly things. And I'd go to the doctor and they'd give me medications, were basically anaesthetics to suppress the discomfort, but nothing actually resolved it. And then I started eating lots of fresh greens that we grew in the garden. And it took me a couple of years to realise, hang on, since I've been here, I haven't had chilblains.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I almost never get mouth ulcers unless I eat sugar or food that's not right for me.
Got it.
So, you know, we've lost touch with that. We're in a world where we want the instant fix. So I've got a symptom, quick doc, give me the pill that's going to not stop me from feeling this. But really, these symptoms are like the red light on the dashboard of your car.
Absolutely. I've been working with an app called Noom, and it's a bit corny in places, but ultimately you calorie count unlike your food, but it makes you mindful. Makes you mindful of what you are consuming. And in some of my meals, I realise I've got 19 ingredients. Right, 19 or 20 ingredients. You know, I put a little bit of garlic in there, I put the salad, I put some rockets, you know, and they all have a different caloric representation. And then I thought, geez, I'm hankering for a bit of sourdough bread. And I didn't realise, oh my God, you know, one slice of sourdough bread is half a caloric budget if you're on weight loss, gone. And then if you slap some peanut butter on it, man, you know, you've just really knocked yourself out of the ballpark. It doesn't mean you can't have these things, but you just got to be conscious of what you're doing rather than mindless eating.
Well, you know, for me, I find I'm better off not having any of those at all.
Cool.
And once you get used to it, I don't miss it. But, you know, I was the guy that, you know, I remember coming back from a camp one day and I bought a whole loaf of bread. And I ripped out the middle and ate it, and I stuffed it with potato chips we bought at the shop,
right.
and I ate the whole damn lot. So I was a carboholic. And, you know, you can do that when you're young and your hormone levels are up here and you're running like crazy. And, you know, I was going canoeing and rock climbing and abseiling and all that kind of stuff. A lot of exercise will hide a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing that manic amount of exercise, which for most people isn't sustainable after, you know, by the time you get to 30 or something like that. And well, the other factor on that too is, aside from the weight issues, if some people can tolerate grains better than others, but I know for me, if I eat grains, it's not just that they're going to put on weight, they will do. But I'll have upset digestion, I'll have all these other annoying symptoms. So I think, you know, the human body is really adaptable.
Yeah.
From a survival perspective. You know, if we're starving, we can live on grains and grasshoppers.
Well, the sad part is, if we're eating things that I call nutrient deficit foods, like bread is a nutrient deficit food. They say, oh, there's always vitamins, but, you know, half those vitamins have been put in there, you know, and they're not assimilatable. But the thing is, when I told the doctor I was going to sort my diet out, he was pretty much overweight himself. But I listened to this one line he said to me. He said, oh, it's not just what you take out, it's what you put in. And I thought, wow, okay. And I when I make an omelette, for instance, I might put a smattering of cinnamon in if I haven't had cinnamon for the day. I'm not going to taste the omelette anyway, but I'll put a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon in, because cinnamon's an anti-inflammatory for the heart. Drop my turmeric and my black pepper, ground black pepper in. We had to exacerbate the curcumin. But the other thing I do is, after I've done all that, I say, well, why not some paprika and some cayenne pepper? Now, cayenne pepper is really good for heart health and for arteries and coronary stuff. And how many people even heard of cayenne pepper or use it? You know, they're just not aware of how all these different herbs and spices really bolster the health. And once you hit the 60s, you're pretty much on a journey of, now we have to do something to survive and not end up with diabetes too, and not have all the coronary issues. Because I've got a saying that if you go to Bunnings and buy a pot of glue, it'll be about this big, 2 litre, 4 litre tin of glue, and you'll give it a little tube about that big, 200 ml of catalyst. Now, if you put the catalyst on wood, nothing will happen. It's just liquid. You put the glue on the wood, nothing much will happen. It won't stick. But you put the catalyst and the glue together, and it'll form a bond. Well, I see it like that. Food is the bulk, and the exercise the catalyst. You can't have one without the other. If there's no exercise, you're not going to catalyse the food. But if the food's not right, the catalyst is not going to work. You've got to have an understanding that if you get the diet right, the amount of exercise required is a hell of a lot less.
Well, look, not only that, I had a friend's personal trainer, and she tells me she's got clients of hers who are really, really strong, because they're coming 3 times a week to her PT classes, but they're still 20, 30 kilos overweight, because they come to this great workout, then they stop on the way home and get takeaway. You know, they go to the local Thai restaurant and get a whole load of white rice. And, you know, these days, grains and soybeans and sugar are the cheapest food that we can make.
Right.
So all the junk food is made largely of those 3 things.
It's
so anything that's processed,
and
that's not food we're designed to eat.
No, processed food is where the cancers and the ailments and the stressed adrenal glands, the kidneys. And when someone said, oh, I've got diabetes too, and I said, well, if you've got diabetes too, you can be rest assured that you're dealing with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, you're probably dealing with pancreatic issues, adrenal issues, and kidney issues. They go, well, I said, it's all connected. You don't just say, oh, I've got a faulty kidney, I've got this. It's your systemic metabolism. The metabolistic machinery is broken or damaged, or not processing food. Like, of course, an elite athlete can go down there and get himself a hamburger and woof it down and he'll just fry it, you know, if he's done it once. But, you know, any of this habitual stuff with these wrong foods, it's really dangerous, and it sends you on a journey that's hard to recover from. I know. I mean, the last 4.5 months of my journey from 92 down to 74, when people say, "Oh, teach me, show me, tell me," and I say, "I can tell you, but I have to kill you." You know, it's a Spartan effort. It's not easy. I've been doing 10,000 steps a day, right? Minimum. I did 25 the day before yesterday, right? 25K steps. But and I've got a life to live. So now what I do is I make sure I don't do too many more than the 10K, because I'd rather appropriate that time to my life, you know, rather than just keep walking around the block or whatever I do. Go for a nice walk down the beach. But as I start to introduce that beautiful exercise, you give me the nitric oxide done.
Yeah, that one from the cola.
Yeah. I've only been doing it twice a day.
Yeah.
Because it's full on. I'm doing it with 3 kilo dumbbells, and I find for my
it's actually designed to be done without weights. But
oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's okay. If you do it with weights, that's good. That's going to help you get some of the muscle that you're after.
Well, I know it's a stretch when I do it. It is pretty intense, but I make sure I do at least 20 minutes worth of exercise. I do my 40 push-ups a day and stuff like that. I get them done in the morning, and I know I've got to get to resistance training now, because ATP and muscle is so important for mature age people, because they just don't realise that if you want to live into your maturing years healthily and have some longevity and enjoy your mature years, you need muscle.
Yeah,
it is a biggie, and I walked and fooded the weight off, but now I don't have to fight excess weight and inflammation, because I think this whole thing about converting fat to muscle, I would rather say I have learned to live at this weight and be content with that, and content with the diet, the food, and the lifestyle. Now, as I add muscle, I don't have the fear that it'll turn back into fat, because if I add muscle, it'll be through the lifestyle, through the habits I develop. I think these quick fixes and these urgent things, they have a springback effect. They're all the biggest losers went back to the original weight. You know, mostly.
Well, the thing is, they didn't resolve the causes. And the other thing I should add is, I don't think fat turns into muscle or muscle turns into fat. I think if you don't exercise, muscle will waste. And if you eat too much of the wrong foods, you'll put on fat.
Yeah.
But there's no reason you can't drop fat and put on muscle at the same time. But that doesn't mean you're converting one to the other.
No, well, see, they say, "Oh, you're a fat burning machine." They call fat burning, right? Well, what it is the muscle burns calories.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit of a sleight of hand there when they say it burns fat. You know, it burns calories. And the thing is, when you lose weight, you can be losing muscle mass, you know, because if you've starved yourself and not got the calories you require. So
it's not just the calories. If you haven't got enough protein, you'll lose muscle.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got enough of the right kind of protein that your body can absorb.
Yeah. I'm not into the protein powders. I don't know why.
I don't think they're not balanced. They're not the way our body's designed to take protein. I read somewhere that, in the old days, a lot of bodybuilders would eat just the egg whites. And what they've found is that if you eat the whole egg, you can absorb up to 48 or 49% of the protein. If you have just the white, which percentage-wise has more protein, the yolk of the egg does have significant protein, but also has fats in it. But if you eat the two together, you absorb 48, 49%. If you have just the whites, I think it's something like only 17% you absorb.
Yeah, well, that's
if you're having protein powders, your body's not going to utilize most of that, but the majority of that is going to get converted into sugars and burn.
Yeah, I've wrestled with the whole egg thing for years, and now I've realised if you eat 2 eggs a day, it's not going to do you any harm whatsoever. It's probably going to do you a lot more good, you know. I can't eat 2 eggs a day every day because it's mindless of just chugging 2 eggs, 2 eggs, 2 eggs, 2
I don't
eggs.
chug them. Have them with good food.
I have them with good food. I mean, I have like 100 grams of super slaw coleslaw mix, right? And I'll put gherkin with it. I'll put raw garlic that I crushed, so the allicin is released, you know, from the raw garlic. So I'll put that in there. Some lemon juice or balsamic vinegar on occasions. I have rocket on there, you know. So I do have a good meal with eggs, but I'm finding now that I fooded it off and I created all this wonderful cuisine of health. That what now is you're moving away from values. I was sick, I don't want to be sick.
Yeah.
So now I'm moving towards values. What am I going to do with this body? So I've taken up badminton and I'm a beginner.
Yeah.
So my goal is to become intermediate, you know, that you know, to improve and advance. So on the way to that sport, what carb am I going to use to feed that sport? Because I've cut all the carbs out. I've reduced the weight, but I'm off to a sport that requires energy to fuel it. And you need carbs for that. So that's a conundrum.
Actually, that's a myth. That's an absolute myth. That some of the healthiest people I know have 0 carbs.
Even in their sport.
Even in this sport.
Okay.
I remember many years ago, and when I was 17, I was in the Victorian skin diving team.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything that would be as energetically intense. You're swimming in rough, cold water,
yeah,
which burns calories like nothing else does. Free diving down to 10, 20, sometimes 30 meters.
Wow.
You know, loading a spear gun, spearing fish, swimming up, grabbing your breath back down. It is really intense. And there was one guy there, Jeff Skinner. Jeff was built like Man Mountain. And I remember I'm there at the beginning of the competition eating a burger.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I won't use the exact language, but he said, what are you eating that excrement for? And I said, I need the energy for it. He says, no, if you eat the right food, you've got all the energy you need without even having your breakfast. Now, this was a guy that won the Australian Championships, I think, 10 years straight.
Right.
A superb athlete, and whatever sport he did well at, but he had no breakfast. He did that. He said, if you eat good food, it's all there.
Yeah.
And these competitions were 5 or 6 hours where you're continually, if you're not swimming, you're running.
Right.
Right. You're continually on the go. You're in cold water, which sucks a lot of energy.
Well, see, I watch athletes because I have some connections in that area with some athletes, and I watch some of the food they eat, and I go, how can they do that? You know, like they'll just get a thing of honey like that and just squeeze half the tube of honey into the oats, right? Because their body's a furnace. They think it's a furnace.
Yeah,
but they're going to pay to build down the track.
They're going to pay to build down the track because they're, you know, it's interesting. A few years ago, I was hiking, trekking through Vanuatu, and I was talking to one of the guides there. I said, what are you doing for Christmas? He said, I'm going to the outer island where I was born. I said, are you going to go and see your parents? He said, yeah, and my grandparents and my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents. I said, your great-great-grandparents? How old are they? He said, well, my great-grandmother is 114. And my great-grandfather is so old, he was born before they counted years, so no one knows how old he is. Right. Something over 114. I said, what's their health like? He said, they're active. They're doing stuff every day.
Yeah.
I said, well, my next question was, what do they eat? And I said, well, he said, well, we eat the coconut and the plants that grow around, and we have a lot of fish, and we have the wild pigs. Of course, none of that's processed, but they're eating food that's grown locally. The only fruit they had was pawpaw, but that's only ripe for a relatively short time. Most of the pawpaw, that pawpaw is salad. So they get it green and they kind of scrape it up, and it's kind of like chopped lettuce.
Right.
So they're not having any carbs, or very, very little carbs. They occasionally have a bit of taro root, but that's not what they have all the time. That's one of the harder foods to get.
Yeah,
they've got to dig it up.
Well, I only found out recently that you could eat kiwi fruit with skin on. You know, the very skin?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why would you want to do that? I said, because it's 50% fibre. And when you have high fibre with sugars, there's a trade-off, you know, and the sugars that aren't as impactful. So I've tried to eat some kiwi fruit with the skin on. It's different.
Yeah, I have a relative to the kiwi fruit. I have a feijoa tree.
Yeah.
It's not as fuzzy, but it has a skin that's fairly bitter. And the few I do get to eat, I eat with the skin on. But here's the thing. You know, when I was in my 20s, I was really exploring health because I had a lot of injuries. I was hit and run by a car at 17. I broke my neck in a car accident at 24. And, you know, there's a lot of other injuries too. Overcoming the injuries from that was a real challenge. And I got into this book called Fit for Life. And one of the things they advocated was having nothing but fruit before before midday. Now, I'd wake up hungry. I'd eat a piece of fruit. I'd get that blood sugar spike, and within 20, 30 minutes, I'm hungry again. So sometimes I would have eaten 1 or 2 kilos of fruit by lunchtime. I was perpetually hungry. And the result of that was doing that for 8 years, I'd ruined my teeth.
Oh, dear.
Because of all the sugars. But also I'd ruined my digestive system, my continual bloating and flatulence and all sorts of horrid stuff going on there. But also I'd grown a 13 millimetre kidney stone, 1/2 inch kidney stone.
Wow.
And what I only found a few years ago was that fructose, fruit sugar, breaks down into oxalic acid. And oxalic acid, which is also, by the way, in some leafy greens, especially spinach. And oxalic acid is one reason why you don't eat rhubarb leaves. There's that much oxalic acid that apparently can make you really sick or even kill you. But the body attempts to neutralize oxalic acid by taking calcium and other alkali minerals out of our bones to neutralize it. And if you're not flushing that out with enough water, then that can form these calcium oxalate stones.
Wow. Yeah.
And you're not going to pee out the 13 millimetre kidney stone. That was not fun at all. So, but even prior to that, I'd worked out the hard way that eating a lot of fruit's not good for us.
No.
And I returned to nature. On this property, I think we've got 14 or 15 fruit trees. Now, apart from the citrus, which stay around for a long time, and I have lemons and limes, which have almost no sugar. But of all the sweeter fruit, they're never around for more than a few days a year before the possums and the birds get them. You know, I had a tree loaded with beautiful Fuji apples. I got to eat half an apple last year. You know, because the possums and the cockatoos, they can eat them while they're green and not get a stomachache.
Right.
So I think in nature, we're not designed to have a lot of fruit.
Yeah. Well, I went off the fruit completely and just stuck to blackberries and blueberries.
Because they're lower in sugar.
Yeah. Well, blackberries are the lowest on the glycemic. then comes blueberry, then comes raspberry, then comes strawberry. I've gone off the strawberries pretty much completely. I don't touch them. I really occasionally have raspberries as a treat. Not over keen on them anyway, but the blueberries and blackberries. And what I did is I did a liver cleanse type thing where I was getting frozen blueberries, frozen kale, and kefir, and making a shake out of that. I did that for 14 days, and that was part of my weight loss regime. I got that from Dr. Berg.
Oh, yeah, he has a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, he has a lot of good stuff. I vectorise my information. Like I listen to Diary of a CEO. I listen to Dr. Berg, Dr. Mandel, Dr. Axe. Now, some of them are chiropractors.
What's the other guy? Is it Stan something Berg?
Ekberg, yeah.
Ekberg, yeah, he's got some good stuff
too.
too.
He's got some good stuff too. He's a new player. He was a decathlon or something now.
Decathlon, yeah.
Decathlon from the Olympics. Look, I think it all comes back to what you said, what works for you, and it's trial and error and experimentation. I cycle through things. I say, let's try this for a while. And then I realised, my hindsight showed me that probably wasn't good, or if I'm going to visit that, I'll visit it for a week and that's it. I won't go on too long, because I realised variety keeps it going. You've got to cycle your nutrients, because if you take all the supplements you're meant to take and eat all the foods you'll be rattling like a buzzer. You'll be staggering around, because there's just so much to get into you. But as long as you have a good sense of balance, and you watch your caloric intake. Everyone says, calories are all crap. And I say, well, yes and no. I mean, if that's your only measurement, you're probably flying blind. But it's something to consider. If this hole is bigger than this hole, you're going to have a problem. If you eat too much, portion size was probably. I just say, but I eat healthy food. Yeah, but you eat too much.
Well, see, that's interesting. Watching calories has worked for you. I've never watched calories. To me, going into that amount of detail would just drive me bonkers.
And it'll drive me bonkers too. But I never like to talk about something or can something unless I've actually tried it. Got experiential evidence where I can say, no, I know, I've done that. I've seen that. So I did 2.5 years of Feldenkrais. I did 2.5 years of Pilates. I did 2.5 years of Iyengar yoga. I did 5, 6, 7 years of martial arts. I've dipped myself into a lot of inkwells, with the health industry, and I was with Sage Active Clinic, like a 2IC in exercise physiology and myotherapy. Into chiropractic. I went to physios. I've looked into the whole health spectrum so that I could get a holistic view and start to say, well, what's going to work for me? And what I find is you start off in unconscious incompetence, where I was when I realised I found out I was sick. I went to the doctors. I said, I don't feel well. And they said, you have all these problems. Well, I was unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah.
Managing my life. Then all of a sudden I became conscious of my incompetence. I go, oh my God. So how do I get competent or consciously competent? I look into all this stuff, and it's a big journey. Yeah. Now, hopefully the trail out of that obsessiveness and that OCD, or whatever you call it, right? Or CDO, OCD spelled in alphabetical order. Yeah. It is unconscious competence, where you masterfully float through life. I look at my father. He lived till 97. He was fourth in the world for swimming. He was a champion. He set world records at 91. And now, when I go for a swim, or I go for a walk, or I'm eating a meal, or I'm thinking about things, his voice is in my head 24/7 talking to me, like just saying, look at that tummy of yours, or haven't you had enough food, finish your dinner, like just little digs and perks here and there that have brought me around to realise success leaves clues. the health model is there if you want to have a look. It's when are you going to love yourself enough to and respect yourself enough to say, I care about myself. I really want to put myself back together in a good way and live into a compelling and optimistic future. A lot of people don't care about their health because they don't care about their future.
Well, I think a lot of people do care about their health, but the emotional drivers are getting in the way.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, I was going through a really busy time with some transitions business-wise. I was running a lot of workshops, seeing a lot of one-on-one clients. There was heaps going on. I was also maintaining an office in the city, which meant I was driving a lot, often finishing late, coming home really late. And at that time, I worked with 3 clients that had weight loss issues. And each of those 3 people had one issue at least that I also had. And that was fascinating. So, in fact, most of these people, what I find usually with weight loss is there'll be at least 2 or 3, sometimes half a dozen emotional drivers with their eating, and they all have to be addressed separately. But one of them, and probably some of the viewers will relate to this, maybe you do. As a kid, I'd have beaten into me that we always had to finish the plate.
Yeah, cultural.
You know, apparently there's kids starving in Biafra, and me finishing that plate is going to help them somehow. In the end, I said to my dad, frickin' post it to them, you know. It's not doing me any good. But, you know, we had to finish the plate. Now, my parents went through, you know, the bombing of London and all that stuff in World War II and the food rationing. So I can understand it coming from there, but they then imprinted that onto me. So always have to finish the plate. The other one is you have to have 3 meals a day. Now, again, that's a total myth. You know, apart from grazing animals, no animals do that in nature. You know, and we need that time when we're not eating. But I had this thing, you always have to have 3 meals a day. And the other thing was, if there was something I didn't want to do, you know, I've got to finish my tax or these forms to fill out. I hate doing forms. I would procrastinate by snacking. And so as I resolved these for each of my clients, I'd resolve those 3 packs for myself.
Got it.
And at first I wasn't even conscious, but then one day I remember getting back from a day working in the city, and I've been seeing clients till about 9 p.m. I did my shopping on my way home. So it was like 10:30 when I got home. I thought, heck, I've had breakfast, I haven't had lunch. And then something inside clicked and said, it's too late to eat now. I'll eat something in the morning. There was no push-pull. It was just that came in.
I find that this topic is phenomenal. There's just so much we could talk about. So what I would like to do is I'd like to propose that we come back and have another session and continue the conversation so that we can deliver this in a fashion that people don't get overwhelmed with too much information. So I hope that those of you watching can take something away from this and realise that if you really want to take health into your own hands, you need to become your own practitioner, your own scientist, your own researcher. And there is a lot online, but I vectorise my information. In other words, if I hear one particular person espouse some remedy or some track to run on, I'll go and look at 5 or 6 other references to validate and verify that information. But ultimately, I will put it in the ultimate crucible myself. And if it works for me and I go, wow, that really did help me, then I will cycle it and I will switch it on and I'll switch it off and I'll see how that pans out for me. And if I find it's a crock, it doesn't work at all, I will disband it regardless of what's been told to me. So you really have to test these things out. Russell, this is fantastic. I think there's some real meat and potatoes in there, but by the way, don't mix your meat and potatoes. I stay away from potatoes. That's a story for another day. But thank you for giving me your precious time and us having this chat that perhaps some people can make some comments in the footnotes, and if you like what you've seen here, then please subscribe and ring the bell, and we'll be back for more on the topic of health and wellness.
Great. Thanks, Freddy.
Yeah.